by MBA and beyond. Um, Welcome, Sanjana. Welcome, Ashwin, and welcome everyone to this session. My name is Ashwini. I'll be your host tonight, and today we want to cover a very important topic. And I want to invite Sanjana and Ashwin to introduce yourself.
So I'll go first. Hi everyone. I
Sanjana, I'm
am.
not sure if you're audible.
Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, Sanjana. I'm not sure,
Oh,
Ashwini, if you've been able to hear her.
Yes, please go ahead.
okay. Otherwise, Ashwin, if it's easier, maybe you could start. Let me try and figure out if it's maybe my Wi-Fi that's slowing me down.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I think Sanjana, you're audible. Absolutely fine.
I am? Okay. Okay.
Great.
All right. So I studied at KPMG. I have 6 years of experience working in consulting. And right when I was ready to do my MBA, I got in touch with MBA and Beyond to apply to some of my dream business schools. And I'm happy to say that I'm currently pursuing my MBA at INSEAD. I'm already on my what, fourth semester. So I have 5 in total. And yeah, I credit my entire application journey and success to MBA and Beyond. So I'm happy to take on any questions about the MBA journey, how about applications, and how MBA and Beyond has been helpful, and answer any questions later on.
By the way, really like your background.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
Ashwin, would you like to go ahead?
yeah, same as Sanjana, I think pretty much the credit definitely does go to MBA and beyond. So I come from a commerce background. I've been pursuing actuarial science. So I did not have a very typical profile which is suitable for most business schools. I've been working in the Indian retirement benefit space for almost 5 years now. And I'm now set to actually pursue my MBA journey from Imperial College Business School, set to start in September 24. So pleasure to be here today and willing to offer my 2 cents for your journey ahead.
All right. Cool. Thank you so much once again. Welcome on board. So we're going to have a very simple, format. We're going to start with some basic questions that we have already collected from some of the applicants, and then we're going to open the floor for all our participants here to ask a question. You can put down your questions in a chat box. You can, raise your hand, and you can come on camera or just speak out your questions that you have in mind, and we'll try and address them. All right. So today's questions or the session is revolving around the low GMAT and how can we manage that expectation. So the first question that we have for tonight is, how does a low GMAT score impact admission to a top business school?
Okay. Ashwin, do you want me to take that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
any one of you can go ahead.
Okay.
Let me start.
Yeah, go for it.
I think, in terms of the impact that the low GMAT score has, it's almost like an analogy. Imagine you're taking part in a race where people with an average score are at the start line. People who are already above, some points above the average score are pretty much ahead the start line. And then there are you who is starting with a low GMAT score. So you are a bit behind the start line itself. So now your task is to actually make sure that all other parts of your application, which could be your application essays, the way you perform in your interview, any additional aspect of your application in terms of the research papers or anything extra in terms of hobbies that you've carried out, those are the elements that need to outshine so that this lagging behind does not impact your outcome. So that's how I would explain an impact of the score. So Sanjana, happy to have your input.
I see a question. Will Ashwin and Sanjana be able to share their GMAT scores for context?
So Sanjay, what's your take?
So I had a 680. I'm comfortable sharing that. And I agree with Ashwin completely. I wouldn't say it's impossible. Um, but then that means that since you are kind of behind that start line, like she was saying, you need to cover up that little gap with something else, be it certifications, be it experience, be it your professional things, be it your personal interests. But you need to cover up for that gap that you have, and then sort of strengthen your chances. So it's like I say, it's not impossible, but you need to know. I knew, for example, the potential that my application would have. It might be weaker on the GMAT score, but I knew what the strengths and qualities were that I was probably above average on or excelling on. So I knew that, with the counselor, I would be able to kind of position those to be my strengths, and play the right card.
So I think that's absolutely right. Even with me, because you have to bring out those elements that outshine for you. And you have to have them right at the start. You brainstorm about your application, go through the entire process, and start thinking right from the start. What if your GMAT score is low, but hey, there are other elements of, let's say, the GMAT tests the numerical ability, and you're already working in a setup where you are, in terms of your work experience, sort of negotiating for that aspect, and you already have, you're working in a role which is very quantitative in nature. You can justify that element of a lower GMAT score. That's what helps.
Understand when we speak with a lot of applicants having low GMAT score, this is a big thing that they're also considering, right? Whether to go with the same score, whether to reapply, maybe to take a reattempt and try and improve your scores. And a lot of people are in this dilemma, right? Could you share any tips, showcase your profile strength beyond the test scores, right? How can you showcase yourself in the applications if this is the best score that you have?
Sure. I think beyond anything, so of course, in most MBA applications, your professional experience is very important. So to show any sort of promotions, to show advancements, and talk through, say, awards and recognition, or your individual contributions at work, maybe managing a team, the responsibilities that you're holding out of the ordinary, those really do strengthen your application. Um, to basically show a value as to what is the role that you're playing in your organization and how are you contributing and impacting in your role, or what's the impact that you're creating, be it revenue based or even something which is quantifiable, basically. I would say that is one of the largest differentiators between you and anybody else. And so if you're able to really strengthen your chances in your application by showing how you are different from the others that are in that role.
And I think, just to add on that, in addition to the work experience, the other elements that can really add value would be in terms of, any extra hobbies that you have, then any additional academic courses that you might have done. Let's say in my case, I had a specific actuarial science certification that I was pursuing. So those are the things that would ultimately add value and make your application unique. And in addition to that, any social work, volunteer work, so things like that also matter in the business school world.
All right. So, do you guys really think that a narrative can be really built around a low GMAT score, right? And if it is possible, then what could be the key elements, right? What can you do? What can you talk about, right? What can you focus
Oh, I think most definitely. A lot of us have built that narrative throughout our applications to present a coherent story, that can eventually be appealing to the school. So typically what the schools are looking for is, this is where you've been working up until now, which is your past experience. Then there are XYZ skills that you bring to the table.
on?
Then there's something which, what are your future plans, which are the post MBA goals. And then that school, in terms of the resources offered, the faculty, location, whatever it is. So it is that school that you need to reach your goals and make an impact. So you have to show in your application that that very school is the missing piece, and MBA is that jigsaw puzzle of your life that you need. to pursue your post MBA goal. So that's the narrative that you have to build along in your application, and somewhere then justify that, hey, I know I have a low GMAT score, but this is what I bring out in addition to my score, which my potential is not really just reflected by my score. And that's how you build that entire narrative. And I think in terms of that, the process here at MBA and beyond has been really helpful, because how we start is with a basic introduction, and then you have a set mechanism where you have the content gathering phase, you have a personality test where you are actually collecting all your life stories before you've even started to work on a B school application. So you have all that data in place for you, and then you start picking up your application, which actually lets your individuality shine when you work on the application.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with what Ashwin said. There are a lot of different elements as to what she said, which highly I would say, yeah, that's very important. And the low GMAT score is not something that can bring you down, frankly. It's one of many different parameters that a business school is grading you on. So while you might be weaker on one parameter, you might also be stronger on many others. So really, it is about putting your best foot forward and kind of reflecting those stronger areas in a way that it justifies and makes up for the weaker areas.
Okay, so Sanjana, while I understand today where when you look back, I think this looks like a great decision, right? You felt comfortable with whatever score you had at that point in time. You took a leap of faith. You focused on the other elements which you had more control on, and then you focus on building a profile, right, and presenting the best story possible. Uh, but back then, was it that easy, right? How do you deal with that mental dilemma, right? Whether this is the right score for you or not? Because obviously, none of the schools give you a cutoff, right? They give you a range. So, how do you decide that this is the right score for me and I can go ahead with this?
Yeah, I think it was not yeah, I think now you're right, sitting at this point it's a lot easier for me to
Correct.
say, but back then it was the biggest stress point in my life, frankly, because I knew that my score was week, and actually at that point I didn't even have a score. So I was taking my GMAT, I was working, and I was like targeting my business schools, working on my application. So I was doing all the three things together. And I know what that can be like in terms of how what a burden it feels like, because there's so much, it's so overwhelming. And how I picked my schools, actually I tried to I'd say the clarity was not there. I was just nervous. And when you don't have the right score and all of that, I think even the stronger areas that you have in your application, frankly, I didn't have the respect for or the clarity for, because only when I spoke to my counselor at MBA and beyond, I started feeling confident about my application. Before that, I think I just felt like the GMAT score was a reflection of who I am. So that really changed my perspective. And I think when I was applying to schools, I had just a couple of safe schools that I was thinking of, and I discussed with my counselor. And it's actually my counselor that said, I think you should apply to some of the like the dream schools and the tougher ones to get into. And I was like, no, I also want to get into a business school. I don't want to just do out of reach. And my counselor saw that potential in me, frankly. And I remember round two, I was supposed to apply to INSEAD. I had two other schools I was applying to, but INSEAD was like that one risk that I was willing to take. I was like, yeah, what's like, even I was like, okay, let the school reject me. I won't count myself out of the running. And round two, my GMAT score, I took the GMAT before round two, and it didn't go well at all. So I wasn't in a position, frankly, to apply. It was not a good score at all. And I remember telling my counselor, forget it. NCR is not happening. Like, I don't even have a score worth putting into my application. And now next round is round three. So my chances are basically nothing. Nobody tells you to apply in round three. And my counselor was like, you know what? No, you are meant for INSEAD and you shouldn't give up. I see you in INSEAD. I see how you're perfect. Like, you have all these qualities, and really motivated me to take the GMAT again. I took the GMAT again. I had half of my application ready. We pushed through my application, and I credit Andy till date. He saw it. He saw the potential. He had the faith and confidence that I didn't. And I round 3 INSEAD 680. Right now it seems like a success story, but I had never imagined for it to happen. So you look at the numbers online, you see what the averages are, and yes, if usually they have 690, 710, and various other averages of GMAT scores. But then you also look at other metrics like what is the average years of experience, what's the average age, what's the background people come from. I came from a consulting background, which is a strength in INSEAD because it's a consulting focused school. Um, I had 6 years of experience. I had various levels of opportunity leadership. I had a bit of international exposure. So I knew that on those parameters I was good. And yeah, so understanding what is the requirement of your dream school, or what is an average person look like in your dream school in terms of the background they come from, is really important when you're going through the cycle. So don't just look at a GMAT score and think, oh, I don't fit this. There's so many other things and qualities they're looking for in their candidates, and usually talking to alumni and things like that really help.
I think that's very important. A couple of learnings which I take from what you just said is you are not your GMAT score. You're more than that. And I think the second one is having somebody next, guiding you, counseling you, whoever that person is, right, in your life could be very helpful, right? Somebody who can motivate you, give that confidence, especially when you're low, right, at that point of time. Ashwin, do you have any views on this?
I think pretty much like Sanjana, I'd say that I remember coming out of my GMAT exam, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to apply with this score. So I have a 640, okay. And I thought 640, no, I'm not going to apply. Let me not apply. I'll take a deferral year. I'll just prepare. I'll think about it, what to do now. And then I just told my score that hi to my consultant, and I mentioned this is what I have, and she's telling me congratulations, we can now start the process. And I'm like, are you sure? I don't really want to apply with this score. And then she was like, no, at least you should give it a chance. Let's start with the safe schools first. You can give a shot also later in terms of the GMAT, but don't miss the deadlines. You have I had the content gathering, that phase ready. And I just had to then start working on the application questions. So I thought, okay, let me just give it a chance, not hoping, to get an admission letter, let alone a scholarship. So, in terms of my case, again, I think it's really important to look at the other factors, like Sanjana mentioned. So, for me, I was a typical outlier case in terms of a business school application. So, someone coming from a commerce background with an actuarial science element, then having your own startup in a very creative industry. So, I practice calligraphy. Then a lot of my, certifications or the things that I'd done at work were very different from a typical profile. So it was also from a financial consulting industry, but it's in the retirement benefit space, specifically targeted to India. So it's about building that narrative, along with putting in your score. So the score is one of the tick points that you have to establish while submitting your application. So pretty much, I think, this would sum up how the journey was. But coming out of the GMAT exam, I would have never thought that, this would be the position I'll be now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Ashwin. So while I have a couple of more questions left to ask, but I see a lot of questions popping up in my chat box. So I'm going to open the floor for taking up some of these questions. Uh, Roshabh asked, hey Sanjana, could you please highlight what's different about the INSEAD application process? And did you have international work experience? If not, how did you mitigate the lack of international work experience?
So the INSEAD application is very lengthy. It's about 6 to 8 essay questions, and very detailed. You're talking about your motivations, you're talking about a lot of personal stories, you're talking about professional stories. And so sometimes you don't even realize what they're trying to gauge from this question, but they're really doing a lot of personality based assessment also. Second, after you've submitted the application, they have video essays. So what happens is you get about, I think, 45 seconds to prepare. One random question will be shown on the screen. You get 45 seconds to prepare and speak for 60 seconds, where you just speak and answer that question basically. So you do 2 of that, and that becomes your one complete application. It also has 2 recommendations that you have. So and those recommendations are also about I think 5 different questions with certain word limits. So it's quite detailed. And I would say an average timeline for an NCR application is 1.5 to 2 months. Keeping in mind, start to end, if you've not even started, I would take easily 2 months for it, because you start with ideation or content gathering, like Ashwin was saying, which is where you answer questions. It's on the MBA and Beyond platform. You brainstorm with your counselor how to position yourself, so your sort of strategy in terms of your pitch. And then you start working on the essay questions and pick them up one by one. Also, to make sure that you're not repeating certain things, you're using each question to your advantage, in the sense that you're trying to show a different sort of feature, but at the same time you're building on the strengths that you have as an applicant. So it is not as straightforward as you would think. There is a lot of thought process that goes behind what to answer in each question, and the content gathering and the branding phase is very important for you to get to that point. So that's about NCR application. And about international experience, a lot of people think that the international experience is very important. One, it does not have to be international experience, on ground. If you have worked in global teams, supported teams globally, which a lot of people in India have done, that is also counted for. Second, if you have been in any kind of role which has some sort of diversity, means even in India we have so much diversity. The main reason that they're looking for international experience is nothing else. It's that INSEAD has about 90 plus nationalities that are in that particular cohort. So what they want for you is to be able to comfortable to converse, to learn, and to engage in a very respectful manner with all these different nationalities, and be comfortable with this kind of diversity. And that's what they're looking for in your international experience. So they're not necessarily looking for international and then it's like a check. That's a good to have. But any kind of experience working with diversity or working in a diverse setup is good to show in your application.
Thank you, Sanjana. Our next question is from LOW GMAT. He's basically asking your GMAT scores. I think both Sanjana and Ashwin has shared the GMAT scores 680 and 640, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to the next one, which is okay. So this question is from Rohit Gupta. He is asking, as GMAT focus now being introduced, the scoring scale is a bit different. So if a person having 720 score from GMAT Classic versus a person having 680 of GMAT Focus, will the business school consider Focus score as low compared to Classic?
So when I took it, I think Ashwin, would you be able to answer this?
No, even I took the GMAT Classic, so I think GMAT Focus has been introduced just this year onwards.
Yes,
so even I'm not too sure of how that conversion works.
Yeah, but I would say, I think business schools are very well aware of what GMAT scores are like, because they don't just accept GMAT scores, they also take GRE scores. So they know what GMAT, GRE scores, what is the right score, what it is equal to, and things like that. So if they know what your 680 and Focus will also count for, it's not like they're going to be comparing you from Focus to Classic. So business schools are very well aware.
All right. All right. So we have a hand from Arvind. Arvind, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, hi Sanjana. So my question was, I have a low CGPA. So to counter that, would a high GMAT score be helpful, or the application process itself should be taken care of?
No, I think somewhere academically you need to show high scores. So in my case, I had high scores from undergrad and school. So I would say if you have a low GPA, try and aim for a higher GMAT score. And of course, then after that, if that's not happening, then there are other ways, like we said, and Ashwin had mentioned certifications to kind of make up for the score. But they're trying to see that you can keep up with the rigor of an MBA, because it's quite intense.
Okay.
There's a lot of finance, math heavy things, concepts. So that's what they're trying to basically gauge for.
Also, if do they even check your 10th and 12th scores, like colleges? No, right?
depends school to school. 10th, so in my applications at many places, I don't remember filling anywhere. 12th, also, I don't really recall which ones I did. Maybe one or two, but undergrad ones, yes, they do.
Okay, okay.
And any
Thank you.
other sort of specialization. So they do have a section in most applications for you to add any other kind of courses. Like, so if you've done CA, ACCA, or any of them, CFA, you can add your scores of those as well.
Okay. And also, is there any conversion? Is there any conversion which is required? Like on a scale of 10 to a scale of 4, do we need to convert or keep it as it is?
It will be given. Usually, in some applications, they will ask you to mention the scale. So if you are in percentage, you put in percentage. If it's 4, if it's 10, whatever, you can write your max scale and what your number is as well.
And for each application, like how many colleges would you recommend to take for a round one?
I
Yeah,
mean,
I know it's
Ashwin,
a personal preference, but I was just curious to know how much can I give between June to September.
I would say if you start planning well in advance, know what the dates are to see if they're not clashing and there's enough gap between a few, or you can start preparing before. Then, the sky is the limit. Do as many as you can. Round one is, of course, the best chances, but I would say, I hedge your bets because you're still looking for an acceptance somewhere in round one. So try and keep a balance of something which is sort of out of your reach, a dream school, and within your reach, so that you have something in your hand that comes out of it versus just taking all risky bets. And
Okay.
also, I would also say the length of the application. LBS and CAT are longer applications, so the time you would invest in doing two of these really lengthy ones, you might be able to do two smaller applications in that much time. So it is just planning that way. But based on your application, based on your profile, your counselors will be able to work with you as to which schools you can apply in which rounds.
Okay. One last question. Uh, Before I start my application process, what should be the pre-work to be done?
Hmm. Ashwin, do you have any? I mean, I have a couple of points, but I could add.
I think pre-work would be in the sense of, one, thinking about, brainstorming and thinking about a couple of your life stories that you would definitely want to showcase in your application. Now, this could be any experiences that you've had in life or something that you would really want the admissions committee to know. And that's how you can mold it in your application in terms of the essay questions. The other parts to it would be definitely be ready in terms of the test scores, have them already in place before you start working on the application. That'll be the ideal scenario that you have everything done and taken in terms of the IELTS or the GMAT or the different requirements as per each school, so that you have that one thing that's out of the picture and now you're working solely on crafting your application. So those would be the two things I'd mentioned. Sanjana, any inputs here?
Yeah, I think I agree. I actually knew almost a year in advance that I wanted to go for my MBA. So the pre-work that I did in one sense, or a few years before that, when I was working, I tried to ensure that I was trying to get as many awards as possible. I was trying to pick up my promotions in time, having those conversations, because I knew that those would count for a lot. I was also trying to do a couple of extracurriculars at work so that it would be a different flavor to my application. So any of the larger events and stuff, I tried to contribute and be a part of. So you can try and find other areas that would be a strength to add to your application.
Okay.
And I think additionally, just to add here, it would also count if you can also research on the schools that you wish to apply to. So looking at the school's website, getting details in terms of, what are the types of the average profile of a student that they take in or the types of scholarships they offer. So, one thing I heard, there was a student who actually applied for his MBA. And what he did was he actually went through each of the scholarships, the criteria, what does it take to get a scholarship, and then he used all those criteria in terms of crafting his application and to ultimately bag a scholarship. So some of the pre-work in terms of getting to know about the schools that you want to apply to and also connecting with the alums or the current students, let's say on LinkedIn, trying to speak to them before you even start looking at the questions that the application has.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I hope that answers your question, Arvind. Our next question is, if you could give a breakdown of how to invest time from here till September, especially for someone whose exams are due.
Allocating time is the toughest. I can completely relate. If your exams are due, does that mean, I'm wondering, does that mean GMAT is due? Because if your GMAT is due now, then you still have a lot of time for the round ones which are in September. So I'm not sure if you could probably, because I think you have plenty of time. So allocating time is not really an issue then. Try and take the GMAT as soon as possible. Now is the best time to get your GMAT scores in the next couple of months, so that you have ample amount of time, about 2-3 months, to do the brainstorming, pick your schools, apply to them, work on your applications and things like that. But the next 2 months would be good to get your scores, so that in case you want to improve your scores and things like that, you can also do it simultaneously while working on your application.
All right. So the next question is from Tina. Are there quant supplements that you took to add to your application? Can you share which of those were you took, if at all you took?
So, in terms of the quant supplements, I would not say supplements as such. For me, I think what came handy was the actuarial science certifications that I had taken. And these are very quant heavy and very financial savvy. So for me, I had, so there are 14 actuarial examinations and I had taken 8 of those. So that's what came handy for me in terms of the course structure. And I could relate it to a lot of, the course or the electives that the MBA school had. So that's what helped me here.
All right.
Yeah, I think anything, even certifications that you're doing will be tech related. If somebody comes from the tech side, then that's also really good to show. Um, because I had a couple of things in skill sets that I had based on tech. So you can always add those, if not math heavy ones as well. That also is a good substitute for it.
All right. So our next question is from Palak. What is the scholarship we are looking at with a low GMAT? This is an interesting one.
Scholarship
this
looking at low
would
GMAT. Ashwin, please.
this would really depend, in terms of school to school that you're applying for. Because in my case, let's say for Imperial College, what happened was once I got through the school, once I had an offer letter, then they had shared with me a list of scholarships that I could apply to. I know a lot of schools, have a couple of scholarship questions in their application itself, where when you are applying, you do enter for the scholarships as well. So now here I'm only talking about the school specific scholarships which are offered. So these are, ranging, and they specifically, let's say Imperial has a couple of scholarships for somebody who's coming from an engineering background. Then the one I got is a female specific scholarship. So there, the criteria and everything differs quite a lot. So in my case, it was, let's say, what is it that I've done up until now in my life for women, and what is it that I would continue to contribute to the community. So these are a lot of elements which are, different and might not just depend on your GMAT score at all. In addition to that, there are a couple of scholarships which are academic centric, which, would focus on a very high GMAT score and a very high GPA, and only then you would back them. But nevertheless, there are these other scholarships which are either region specific, because schools also want to encourage a lot of diversity in their classes, or these are any category centric. Let's say you have your own startup, or you are coming from an entrepreneurship background, and the school has a culture where, they want to encourage entrepreneurship, so there might be a couple of scholarships there. So this is where the research would actually come in handy, that you go through the school website, you look at what are the types of scholarships you can be considered for, and then work around those scholarship essays in those manners.
All right. Thank you, Ashwin. Our next question is from Ishleen.
Sorry, I had asked this question on the scholarship. Just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the context I was asking this question on. So, say for example, I want to go for NCAD, right? Now, the kind of fees that I'm looking at is huge, and I might not want to, or I might not be comfortable paying that amount. But with a low GMAT score, am I looking at any prospective scholarship, and if yes, then I mean, I was just wanting to know what is the kind of range that we are looking at, so that even if you like want to apply, I will apply. That's not a problem. But if the scholarship, the fees is beyond me, then it just does not make sense, is what I believe.
So I think a couple of parts Ashwin had covered very clearly in one of the things she's saying, that scholarship, first of all, the link to the GMAT. Some applications, like she said, they will ask you the scholarship. I remember in IESE, my scholarship question was within my application. For INSEAD, how it works is your application is separate. And while you are going through the cycle of, I think, interviews, or if you get the interview call, they open the scholarship application, and it is a completely separate individual application. In that, they have no idea as to what your what your score is, what your application looks like. They are looking at other metrics and other questions that they're asking you. And scholarships, like she said, can be based on anything. It could be based on women based ones, it could be diversity. I got a diversity one. It could be any it could be for people in science, it could be for entrepreneurs, it could be for tech. So they have different parameters. All schools have different scholarships, especially in round 1 and round 2. There's a lot of variety of scholarships. And I would say this is just my perspective, but yeah, scholarships for different schools can range. It can cover about up to almost 50% of your fees. So it could be 25%, 30%, as much as, like, it depends completely on your application and on different things. Some people who have gotten merit based ones probably get the highest. So I would say theirs are the strongest. But then women ones and L'Oreal and Forte and things like that are also very prestigious scholarships that people get. Second, in terms of the pay, I would say that I understand where you're coming from, but the pay that you're doing for a business or for an MBA, and does the scholarship in very few cases will make it seem a lot lesser than it is. It will always be a substantial fee that you would be paying despite the scholarship you have. I know this because I've gotten a scholarship. And it does not make it pinch any lesser because you have so many other things that are adding on. But you are paying towards a larger you are paying for your career. It is something that you will recover in the next couple of years. So keep that in mind as well. Don't let the scholarship hold you back, I would say, when you are applying to probably a top business school, because I would not think of that as a deterrent to not going and pursuing it.
Sure, thank you.
All right. So the next question is about how do you support the English proficiency test requirement for NCR application? I saw they ask for IELTS score as well.
I actually didn't have an IELTS score, and I don't think that's common. I think they only ask for the GMAT score.
All right.
I think you could probably write to the ADCOM and they will be able to clarify that for you for sure.
All right. Okay, so we have a couple of hands. Akash, go ahead, ask a question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hi, Sanjana. So I have a question to both of you. In regards to the work experience, what matters the most? The number of years of experience or the quality of experience you have? For example, I do have a decent enough experience in my career, but among them, two of the company I have worked for, these are very big names, but unfortunately, I was not able to put much time there, like a very short stint I have worked for my own circumstances. So I was not being able to put much effort to that. So from a MBA perspective, admission or admission committee members perspective, what do you think is a deal breaker? Is it like the longer you work, or it's the quality only, not the quantity?
Ashwin, you want to take that?
So I'd say it's a mix of both, honestly, because you can't just rely on the quality of work if the time is a bit shorter and not, the other way around also. But nevertheless, I think this way, you don't really have to tell the adcom that whatever time you were there for, you did not, put in all your efforts or whatever that case may be. But the point here is to highlight whatever best you have done within that time frame that you were working for that company. So I don't think, obviously big brands do add some weightage to your application in terms of where you are working because they are globally renowned and then they know you've worked in a diverse culture. But even, let's say if most of your time you've worked with a localized Indian company or, some other company, you can always just highlight areas in your CV where you've added value to the company and quantify most of them. That would be, the defining factor in terms of what is the contribution that you've done to your professional work life up until now. And in my opinion, it would not matter much if it's a very short stint at a very renowned company or, let's say all 5 years at a localized Indian firm. As long as the quality of work that you've done is something worth putting in your CV. Sanjana, anything you would want to add here? So for me, all my work ex is with one company, and then I could really, define it or add in terms of the progressions that I've had within these 5 years. For someone I know, they had, let's say one year of work experience with two companies and 3 years at a stretch. So they would definitely have most material for the company they've worked 3 years for, but a certain significant pointers for the ones they've worked for a lesser duration of time.
Yeah, I think I don't really have much to add. Ashwin's answered it.
All right. I
Yeah,
hope
thank you so much.
Prakash. All right. So the next question we have is from Sanket Agrawal. Hi, I'm an IT graduate with work experience at top US investment banks, primarily markets and sell-side research. I aspire to move to front office roles in finance post MBA. Would INSEAD be a good target school for me?
Yeah, absolutely, Sanket. And since you have experience at US investment banks, I would also say you should look at US business schools. They'll also be able to help you get your foot into the door. But definitely, we have finance is another really big set at most B schools. So consulting and finance are the two roles you will definitely find.
Oh, hi, thank you. So I have a follow-up question on this. Is INSEAD a good target school for roles like investment banking, or you meant for private equity roles?
It would be private, I would say private equity and things like that. But investment banking also, there are a couple of companies that come, and I know we have tie-ups and people have been doing treks. So yeah.
Okay,
And
so
there's also, sorry, one more
hmm.
thing. There's also a Silicon Valley trek that they're doing currently. So that also covers a lot of these finance-based companies and roles.
Okay, one more question. So is it easy to get job at this with the same employer post MBA? For example, if I'm working with, let's say, Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, is it easier to move to same bank post MBA in front office role?
Yeah. I have one person in my study group who is JP Morgan, BlackRock, and definitely, I mean, I wouldn't say easy like it is so short, but definitely he has an edge when he's gone back to BlackRock and having conversations with them. So you always have an edge that way.
Got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Sanjana. Our next question is from Ashish. Hi, Sanjana. I will be 35 years old this September with about 10 years of experience across IT consulting, TCS, social impact consulting, own startup, and government and public sector consulting with a big four firm. I have a 730 GMAT and a good leadership experience, extracurriculars, and international projects. What are the prospects at INSEAD? I am also worried about post-INSEAD career opportunities for candidates of my age and experience. In your experience, how do 35-year-olds fare after INSEAD?
So I think rest assured, there are a lot of people that are in their early 30s at INSEAD, and I would say it's very common to find them. They have a lot of years of experience. As long as you know what your post MBA goals are, I would say, especially with your years of experience, and be it for any business school, you will then be able to have perspective as to how that school can help you get there. So usually work backwards as to where you want to be post your MBA and then see how that school can add value. If you tell me you want to get into consulting after this or impact consulting, I would say yes, there are definitely options out there for you post INSEAD as well, and you will fare well. And this is I think I already did chat with you about this as well. You should do a profile evaluation at, and this is open for everybody else, at MBA and beyond. You all should try and take the free profile evaluations and get personalized advice on your application, on your candidature and application, uh, and they'll be able to guide you specifically for the schools of your interest and the next steps that you should take. But I think do not be concerned. And one other suggestion I will give to you is, because again, if you know your post MBA goals, please talk to alums, please do a research and like search on LinkedIn with INSEAD and say social or impact consulting, and try and speak to people that did it. I know I've heard from countless, I'm not saying this because I'm at INSEAD, but I've heard from countless people that if you message 10 INSEAD people, you will get at least 8 responses. That's how the network is and how helpful the people are in the network. So I'm sure people will respond to you and be able to give you advice on, different prospects that you might have.
Thank you, Sanjana. We'll take a question from Katha. Katha, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Sanjana. Basically, I am a CS engineer by profession, as in by education, and by profession, I am an HR recruiter right now. It's been 2 years I'm working, so I want to pursue my MBA in a good foreign university. So, firstly, my base of interest is HR plus business. So, what do you think? Which field is more favorable in the in the terms of this? And second, okay, I mean, I'll just go with this one first.
Okay. So HR
Yeah.
plus business, which field? That's not a like MBA specific question, because MBAs right now in most of our business schools are general management MBAs.
Okay.
So you would be covering things like business for sure in those roles, and I'm sure they are helpful for HR roles in the future as well.
Okay. And then the second thing is, I wanted to ask if I'm pursuing something with HR plus business, is 2 years experience, which I have right now, enough? Or should it be at least of minimum 3?
It depends to the schools you're applying in. For some of the European business schools, because see, it's 2 right now, but by the time you join, it would be 3 probably, or 2.5 plus. So you're
Got it.
closer to the 3 mark. So those schools, yes. But for INSEAD, I would say they are looking for, in those, if you have 3 years also, they are looking for what kind of impact you've had in that role. And usually it
Right.
does not come with just 2 to 3 years of experience. In terms of if it is your just starting out and those are your 2-3 years. Like Ashwin had given an example, if you did 1 year in one company, 1 year in another company, and 3 years in the third company, then your time at that third company will have a lot of value, of course, for you to talk about. So if that is the 3 years, last 3 years in the most recent company, it's different. But if you're just starting out, then it's also sometimes harder, but it depends on your application. Like she said, it is not just, that question of quality and time. It's kind of tough, but
It's
it is application to application based.
right. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I've been having the experience in the same company for like 2 years, and I am planning to stay in the same company for the third as well.
No, so you can stay here for 5 years also, but it is what kind of impact you're driving in your particular role that's as important. It's not just the time. So, like she had said, it is the
Okay.
quality of the work that you're doing in this company. So, tomorrow you can leave and join another company, but the impact you can drive in that company could be a lot more. So, it's not about the time you're spending in one company, it's actually the impact that you're driving in the roles that you're in.
Got it. Thank you so much, Sanjana. I just want to heads up with one more thing. I mean, I literally want a clarification on the same field that I need HR plus business. So, apart from the general MBA, do you have any personal suggestions as per the
No,
scope building in the IT industry right now?
I mean, I know schools like XLRI are HR, best schools for HR. So I would say do your research based on schools that actually might help you specialize in HR and business,
Okay.
and see how that. And by the way, 2 to 3 years might be actually ideal for an XLRI. So think through these things, I think it would be more than me giving you answers. It would be a lot of the research that you put in yourself to see the business schools, because unless you know you want to go abroad, then you would have to look international schools that are, perfect
Correct.
for your application and profile.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjana. All right, we'll take another question from Mudit. Mudit, I also see your hands. Go ahead, ask your question.
Hey, thanks, Ashwini. Hi, Sanjana. Hi, Ashwin. So I've got a couple of doubts. One is both are like quite relevant for me in the sense. So I've not attempted GMAT yet. I am somebody with 5 years of experience right now in working in growth role. Okay, but with a Parisian company. Now the skepticism that I have stems from my not so great uh, 12th scores and not so great BTech scores, which is like 70%, 69 to be precise. So I'm like, okay, if I do not get a stellar GMAT, there's no point of even applying to something like NCR because everything like experience and everything is one side, but then I'm not showing any academic achievements whatsoever. So do you kind of agree to that ideology, or you think there's a workaround for these things? I'm not looking for workaround, but still trying to get a better picture here. Yeah. Sorry for the random question. I mean, improper structuring of the question, but then I hope you get it.
Sanjana, Ashwin.
No, I think here, the schools do value the academic part of your application, but now the entire point again is, can you really justify that one with a higher GMAT score? If not, then what else do you bring to your application? So, like Sanjana mentioned, if you do have the luxury of time, just try and involve yourself into, you know, a couple of extracurricular activities, some certification, something online, a lot of courses. Like she said that she had been planning for an MBA for the past 1.5, 2 years. And then she was specifically targeting things to add value to her profile. And when that happens, your overall application as a whole just boosts up. So if not through the academic route, what are the things that you can add value otherwise is what would matter for you here. Sanjana, anything specific to INSEAD that you'd want to highlight here?
No, I think I agree with you fully. This is across schools, it's true. You don't have to, I don't know, again, I would say do a profile evaluation. Because the work that you're doing, I don't know exactly what role you're in. Um, but that will make a lot of difference as well in the suggestion that I would have to give you at least. Your scores are only so much, contingent so much, but if you're working in a tech role in some firm, then my feedback would be very different to you. So do a profile evaluation and share with the person that is doing that, what you're doing, what your work experience is like. And then they can work with you to see, okay, what is the score? Is it actually very low? Is it actually going to be a deterrent? And also for Indian schools, I'll say 69% is not bad. So don't worry about it. For us, it might seem that way, but for international schools, they understand the rigor that we have at Indian schools, Indian colleges, and 69% is not bad actually. So rest assured.
Okay, thanks. This is insightful and helpful. I have one follow-up question. Um, so second question is like this is something that is not around poor GMAT in general. But the point being like when I look at international job scene and all, I typically see there is a certain kind of edge that tech roles tend to get, primarily around visa offerings from various governments out there. And I see that as a like when I aspire for or even consider an MBA, that I see as a possible downside to it. So is it still applicable when you are graduating from a tier one MBA like NCR or Imperial, or that tends to fade away once you are, in that league?
No, and it doesn't fade away,
Hmm.
definitely. Visa sponsorship is an actual, otherwise, so everybody would be doing MBAs and getting jobs easily. But definitely, there are companies that recruit from your campus that are willing to sponsor that visa. So your connect is a lot better to those companies. If you were to go yourself and apply, that might not be the case. But companies that are recruiting from business schools are okay to sponsor your visa. So your chances become slightly easier and better.
But do you see that happening on a cross border level, like for example, if you're in UK or Paris, and do you see companies coming and offering US visa, for example, for MBA?
Uh, I mean, like I said, I have like 90 plus nationalities. So companies that are coming are very conscious that they might have to sponsor. So very clearly there is a section that says visa sponsored, yes or no. And most of the companies that are coming know that they have to sponsor when you have 90 nationalities. So those roles that are coming to your college are coming most likely with sponsorship only. Very, very few chances will not have sponsorship. In fact, the ones that don't have sponsorship, they won't even broadcast on your platform because they know and they will. But again, this depends school to school. Because INSEAD has so many nationalities, this is very easy. For an American business school with, say, 60% people that are American, then that might not be the case. That, everybody is sponsoring happily and easily. Then there would be specific companies. Consulting companies usually are very comfortable sponsoring. Finance companies are comfortable doing it, but then specific industry roles might not be. So it depends school to school, and you need to put in the work or research to see which school you're applying to, and then what this market situation is like for them.
Makes sense. Thanks a
Ashwin
lot.
might be able to tell you a bit about UK.
Okay, yeah.
I think Sanjana, pretty much you've had it covered because I've not yet gone into that space of knowing about the sponsorship availability or not. But what I've heard from alums mostly is that there is sponsorship available specifically for the schools that are coming to campus. It's a different case if you're applying on your own to other companies or just looking for jobs elsewhere. Then it becomes a different process altogether. But at least this is what I've heard. Similar to how Sanjana mentioned, even with INSEAD, there are 50 to 60 plus nationalities. So any companies that are coming up, they know that they they might recruit a person who's from a completely different, nationality from where that company is. So
Makes sense. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Udit. Hope it answered your question. All right. So we're going to take a couple of last questions. But before that, guys, please share your feedback. A colleague has shared a feedback form. If take a 30-second, just share your feedback so that it can help us, plan the future sessions which can help you. Okay. So we're going to take another question from Anshu Kumar. Anshu, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. So I have a question regarding will the fellowship experience be counted as a work experience? Currently, I am working as a Punjab Good Governance Fellow with Punjab government. And earlier to this, I have worked for L&T Constructions for 3 years and 9 months. So post the fellowship, I'll have the experience of 5.5 years.
I think it would depend in your application. There's a way to call out if it is full-time, contractual, and fellowship and things like that. So yes, you should definitely add it because it is not how you started. It is after your years of experience where you are at now, like 3 years at L&T in this. So I'm sure you can work around it with your MBA counselors to see how you can present it. If you don't add it to your years of experience, I'm sure there's a way to present it in other things. Usually all applications have an additional question, which is an optional question that you can answer. So that is meant for exactly situations like this. So you can definitely work around it with your counselor.
and I think
Is
you can always check this with the AdCom if they would call it out as a professional work experience, then you might as well include it within that section of the work experience.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Actually, guys, I mean, any questions with your applications which are like this, feel free to message the AdCom. They are very responsive. They are happy to answer these questions and advise you. So you hear it straight from the horse's mouth. That's true.
Okay, so one more question I will will the fellowship experience, like it is in government consulting, impact consulting sector, so will it be going to help during my MBA or post MBA career?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. So we're going to take one last question. Rishabh, go ahead and ask your question.
Right. Sanjana, there's one question that I have for you, and then two broader questions for the panel, including Ashwini. The first one, Sanjana, is similar to you. I've spent 5 years in the same company. How do you differentiate the two LORs when you worked at the same company, possibly under the same partner or the same leadership over the course of the last 5 years?
So I got one directly from my partner, because I was also reporting directly to him. So in a sense, he was my performance manager and my partner. So that was one. And the second, I tried to differentiate by getting from some that was within my organization network, but who had been in the capacity of a client for me. So I wasn't technically reporting to him, but I was working on a project that was where he was the client or engagement manager. So that's how I did it. But I had a lot of other options in mind, and my counselor actually we brainstormed and advised me on which ones to go ahead for. So same way, when you know who is the right, when you at least have a couple of options in mind, when you brainstorm with your counselor, they'll be able to tell you who's the right person. But the main thing is to try and get two different kinds of perspectives, like you said, not get it from the same sort of engagement manager. So if you have two completely different types of engagements, and usually you chat with your people that are writing your LORs to kind of guide them about what you're trying to showcase or what kind of qualities you're trying to showcase. And in some cases, frankly, most commonly they will ask you to create a first draft and then submit it on your behalf on so you would be doing the most of the writing and the prep work for them, and then that you work with your counselor again on, so you can kind of navigate and maneuver that situation.
Understood. There are two follow-up questions that I have. One, how do you guys evaluate between US versus EU schools? Or if you could give a broader framework in terms of how you identified the schools in the first place. And the second question, how do you identify which MBA consultant to work with? I mean, what is the framework with which you sort of, I'm sure you engage to a broader list of consultants. So how do you appoint a consultant and how do you navigate with them through the span of, say, 6 months? Like, what is the frequency of communication? What sort of questions should you have for them, and so on and so forth?
Ashwin, you want to take any one of those?
So I think in terms of the schools one, the geography, how you choose schools, where you do apply, this would something, be a very personal question. So for me, I was very sure that I'm going to apply to schools in the UK mostly, and then Europe. So US, why? I was not thinking, one, because I did have 5 years of experience. Second, I did want to be in a class where, diversity is sort of more important to me, to have that experience in terms of sitting in a class with different nationalities, getting that exposure and experience. So, with US schools, I've seen that, a greater percentage of the class mostly comes from the American area. And then with the European and the UK schools, technically, the schools are a bit more diverse. This is again my personal opinion, and then how I thought of planning to apply for the schools. And then you also bring in a certain, other factors in terms of choosing between the above average. When I say above average, I'm saying the dream schools, the reach schools, and then a few safe schools. That's how I curated the list of, let's say, 4 to 5 schools where I do want to apply. And then you actually check base in terms of also your GMAT score, where you are lying. Then what is that school famous for? Does it align with your past experience or your future MBA goals? So that is how I ultimately figured down or narrowed down on the school choices that I'd want to make. And again, discussing all those with your MBA consultant who would help you guide through these situations, because they've been helping a lot of students getting into these schools. They have an idea as to what that school is specifically most famous for.
Yeah, I think I agree. Both your questions are actually very important questions. So I'm sorry, I know we're past the time that we had. Ashwini, feel free to stop me whenever. But these are two very, very good questions, actually. So US versus Europe is a big, big question. Um, First, of course, is the preference that you have. Ashwin is completely right. It's so individual and personal. But two, the two clear differences between them is, one is the years of experience. Um, US schools might not expect you to have those as many years as European schools. European schools are more on the, more years of experience, and because they are looking more at your years of experience. But alternatively, they are more flexible on your GMAT scores, but US scores are not. They're looking at very high GMAT scores. So that's the thing. The other thing between the two is the duration. Most European schools will try and wrap up in less than 2 years. INSEAD, for example, is there's 10 months and 12 months. And then there's also other business schools which are really good in Europe, which would be 18 months, 15 months, 16 months. There's different combinations, but it would typically be a year and a half, less than 2 years for sure. US business schools will be mostly 2 years. So it's about the time that you're trying to invest. And of course, your personal preference. So a lot of people have a personal preference to study in US because they want to work in America afterwards. And that's completely okay. Also, at the age that you're at, that makes a lot of difference. I know people that are a lot younger who can do the 2-year thing. Probably I didn't want to, so I was looking at shorter MBAs, and then that makes the difference. Second is, of course, the markets. Like I was telling you, US is US market. Europe or a UK based business school is going to be basically all the all of the world minus US, technically. So that's on your US versus Europe and UK. Second one was can you remind me again?
It was on how do you go about appointing a MBA admissions
MBA
consultant?
admission consultants. Yeah.
Like
So
what
what's like a
factors do you want to
checklist?
evaluate? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
And sorry,
yeah.
uh, what would be the right amount of money to invest as well? Because from my interactions, it ranges anywhere from as low as about, say, a lakh and a half rupees to right up to like 7 lakh rupees. So I don't really even know what is the right amount of money to invest right with a counselor.
The right amount is on your motivation. Frankly, today, if you ask me, at the time I invested in my counselor, yes, it felt like a lot. I know it was not chump change for me. But having said that, where I'm at today, I I don't feel it, frankly. I don't feel it as a pinch. So really it is about then the checklist that you have. One, you should be very comfortable working with your counselors. I spoke to a couple of people when I did it, and I knew that when I spoke with the MBA and Beyond team, and I spoke to multiple people at MBA and Beyond, each of my interactions were nothing but positive. I felt like I was talking to like-minded individuals. I felt like I was talking to people that understood me. So that was important for me personally, because others were telling me about low GMAT scores and like, oh, you need to do this, you need to increase your GMAT score. And there was hardly any conversation about what I was outside of my GMAT score. So that didn't feel right to me personally. But at MBA and Beyond, the GMAT score was hardly a conversation. It was more about it, what is this number, okay? And then to who are you? Who is Sanjana? What can we bring forward to the application? And that felt like the right conversation personally to me. Second was, of course, the success rate that they have with schools. INSEAD was my dream school. MBA and Beyond and INSEAD, of course, like a match made in heaven. Founders are from INSEAD and European Business School. So I was like, yeah, this sits well with me. And then of course the applicant success stories, that's also really good to see and hear. And then what comes about afterwards. So the support that I got through and through, the experiences, and like we're all part of today. It's been now a year since I applied, and since my time at MBA and Beyond, using in your positions, but I'm still part of the network. So of course I have a business school network, but I think I also have an MBA and Beyond network that's come out of it. So keep that in mind. Yeah, and over to you, Ashwin.
I think you fairly, covered it well here, because we've almost talked about all the pointers. Even for me, I think it was pretty much the same thing. Because I had not taken my GMAT when I was choosing an admissions counselor. But still, the topic of conversation was always, come to us when you have that score, and not, hey, we can still start your application. You can at least start brainstorming your story, your life story, get through those aspects first. So that's what felt right.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. It was great hearing from you.
All right. So thank you so much, everyone. I know there's still a few questions which we wanted to answer. We'd love to answer. So guys, please feel free to reach out. You'll also receive an email from our team, and you can just respond to that, and we can help you get on a one-on-one discussion. You can also book a profile version call, from our website directly. Get on a one-on-one call, get your questions answered, and then take the best step forward. All right. So thank you so much, Sanjana and Ashwin. It was really a pleasure having you both here. And thank you, everyone. We really hope it was a helpful session for you. We're looking forward to the next session next week. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you.